Good afternoon, everyone. I am Richeldis and I am one of the journalists here. I work across Devon Live, Cornwall Live and Plymouth Live. And this afternoon, we are joined by a COVID expert who will be able to answer some of your questions. So I'd just ask if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Bharat Pankania, Senior Clinical Lecturer, University of Exeter Medical School. And before I came to Exeter, I was in communicable disease control for over 20 years at Public Health England.
That's great. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. We'll be asking lots of questions this afternoon about coronavirus and the vaccine. And if you've got any questions that you would like us to answer, then please comment below and we'll try and get through as many as possible this afternoon. So to kick things off, our first question is about the vaccine. And it's one that we get asked quite a lot here, and it's how safe is the vaccine?
Well, as safe can be, and safer still. They go through independent scrutiny. They go through several trials from the animal model to the human model to the larger numbers of humans to the assessment and then independent verification. And then even after we've started giving the vaccines, we still monitor the people that we have given the vaccines to, a large representative sample of the people we have given vaccines to. So overall, we would never ever allow the vaccines to be given to people who are otherwise fit, healthy and well if we were unsure about them. So really, in terms of safety, they're very good, very, very safe, life-saving drugs.
That's great. Thank you very much. So I'll go straight on to our second question, which is also about the vaccine. So how long will the vaccine be effective once you've had it? Will it be like the flu or other shots where you have to get it every year?
Yes, so this is something that we don't really know. But going by the number of people who have been infected over the year and didn't get a second infection, I know many people have, but not many. So the conjecture is that the immunization creates immunity which is longer lasting than we thought. So I anticipate that it will be lasting for at least a year, if not longer. So at the moment, we feel pretty confident that it helps. We feel pretty confident that the immunity lasts for at least a year. Only time will tell. Maybe it will last longer. But we do know that, it is not short-lived like a few months. It is more probably like at least a year.
That's great. Really reassuring to kind of hear that from you, because I know we do get these questions quite a lot and it's great to hear it from someone who's a real expert. So thank you very much. Our next question is, how long till life goes back to normal? And that is a very big question. And I'm sure that you might not have the answer. But again, I know it's something that everyone is really desperate to know.
I think whilst this coronavirus pandemic has given a jolt to planet Earth, we should take the good with everything that has come. And some of the good that has come from the pandemic is the enablement of people working from home. And that we should not cast away with back to normal. So certain things are never going to change. So I personally would advocate that a lot of the air miles and traveling to meetings, etc., be curtailed. Even teaching, University of Exeter, I am teaching from home, and we're going to harness all the technology and do those things. So there's going to be a new order, and that new order was well overdue. So it's all very good. When do we expect to not be living in fear of coronavirus is difficult to answer, but I have a feeling we have to live with this forever. So we will live, we will wonder, we will carry on, but we will carry on in a more controlled manner. It's going to take time until the virus either mutates and becomes innocuous, or we build up sufficient immunity that there isn't the chance of being infected in a few years' time down the road. So it's a difficult one to answer, but I really want to emphasize that in some ways our world has changed. In some ways, maybe we realize that we need to be careful with the environment and not to mess with the environment and prevent the emergence of new nasty viruses.
Thank you very much. And the next questions we've just got through is, we're going back to vaccine question now. So does the vaccine make you immune to the virus? And I know there's been a little bit of confusion from people about how the vaccine actually works.
So that's the whole idea of the vaccines. It is accelerating a normal biological process. So a normal biological process is you come across these viruses in small aliquots. It never makes you ill. It never makes you seriously ill, but your body recognizes it and then it forms immunity against it. So that's the natural biological hit and miss. And what the vaccine is doing is making sure it is as good as can be with not a hit and miss thing, and injecting you and then creating immunity. So that's what the vaccine does. It induces immunity by injection. And in most people, it is protective. It is never 100% protective. So we expect the protectiveness to be of the order of 70, 75, 80% overall with all the vaccines, because there's lots of conundrums and issues in the field compared to the laboratory testing and experimental phase. So roughly speaking, I expect for all the vaccines around 70, 75% protection.
Wow, that's great news. So we're going to go over to some questions that have been asked by people on Facebook. And if you have just joined, please make sure that you leave any questions that you might have below, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can this afternoon. So we've got a question here from Julie, and she says, do you think that the vaccine should be mandatory?
No. I can give you a good emphatic answer. You do not force people to be immunized. There are a lot of people queuing up for the vaccines, and what we need to do is inform, advise, educate, listen to people, listen to their fears, take their fears away, take them away. But what you don't do is force somebody to have something they don't want. So give you an example, I'm a veteran of these things. I have done a lot of work over decades on MMR issues. And I was a GP, I was a children's doctor, I was a community pediatrician. I've been there, seen that, done it all. And my strategy was, when I met the worried, concerned parents, I would talk to them either individually or in groups, and I would show to them what the issues were, how it worked, how it protected, what it did, what it didn't do, and address their fears. And they have genuine fears. So you address their concerns, their worries, explain to them what it does, what it doesn't do, and then allow them to make their own decision. We shouldn't force people to be immunized.
Thank you very much. And we'll go over to another question here by Josie. So Josie asks, what are the pros and cons of each vaccine? Is one superior over the other?
Josie, they all work, and it is really lovely to see that we have different platforms, and these different platforms are all working. So what I mean by different platforms is the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine creates a nanoparticle. A nanoparticle is exceedingly small. It's 10 to the minus 9. You can't see it with the naked eye. So that molecule of messenger RNA is encased in a lipid envelope, which is a nanoparticle size, and then it goes into your cells. The lipid envelope dissolves, and then the messenger works with your ribosome and makes spike proteins. So that's the Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna vaccines. The AstraZeneca Oxford one is very similar, but it does the messenger RNA bit in a different way. It is attached to a chimpanzee virus, which has been altered so that it can't reproduce, it can't do anything, but it can enter your cell. So it enters your cell, the messenger RNA then tells your ribosomes to make some spike protein, and your body recognizes it and makes immunity against it. The Sputnik 5 from Russia is very similar to AstraZeneca Oxford one, except the Sputnik 5 uses human adenovirus, in other words, common cold virus, to carry the messenger RNA into your cells and then make the spike protein. And then you will have heard today that there is a new vaccine that is showing promise, which is called Novavax, right? So the Novavax is spike proteins manufactured in the lab, put into a vaccine, and then injected into your arm. So a Novavax vaccine is very similar to the seasonal influenza vaccine, whereby we inject bits and pieces of the influenza virus into your arm. Now then, all these vaccines do one thing, and that is create immunity. Is there one better than the other? At the moment, we get all sorts of figures about one is performing by giving so much protection compared to the other one, so on and so on. My advice would be take the first one that comes your way. Take it, and take it willingly and happily. Time will tell if there is a superior one compared to others in the field. And that would be very interesting to see if there is a superior one. But at the moment, Josie, my advice would be first one you get, take it.
Thank you very much. And if you've just joined us, remember that we are joined here with the COVID expert. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered, please leave a comment below and we'll get through as many as we can. So our next question is, why are some people saying that the Oxford vaccines should not be given to over 65-year-olds?
Yeah, it's a good question. I like it. Thank you for asking it. It's good. It's good. So the line is not, it should not be given. So the German scientists, I respect them all, took the line that I haven't got evidence that it works well in the over 65-year-olds, meaning I haven't got evidence. But that doesn't mean that I have evidence that it doesn't work. Do you follow? So the important line here, and it's very, very important for me to reassure older people who have been immunized with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, that the evidence as seen by the British regulators is we feel that it will work. The Germans said we feel that we haven't seen the data that it works. So there is a nuance. It isn't a case that it doesn't work. The Germans just say, well, I haven't seen the data. That's all. All right. So we in the UK have decided to go with it. And I would say that's a good decision. The Germans have decided not to go with it. And that is also not a bad decision. The issue is get immunized. But what neither of us want is for people to say that the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine doesn't work in 65-year-olds. That's not true. That's not the narrative. The narrative is we haven't got very strong data. That's all.
That's great. Thank you very much. And we've got another question here from Josie. So my mum is very unwell with potentially an inner ear infection and is unsure if she can have the vaccine until she is fully recovered. At what point are you too unwell to receive the vaccine?
Ideally, we don't want to immunize people when they've got an intercurrent infection. But when you tell me you've got an inner ear infection, etc., I look at that as one, most probably bacterial. Number two, self-limiting. Number three, she will get better. So as soon as you haven't got that temperature and that infection is coming under control with the use of antibiotics and that sort of thing, you should get immunized. What we don't want is, so say hypothetically, you've got seasonal influenza infection, and then I give you coronavirus immunization. The concern is because you had an intercurrent infection when I immunized you, you might not mount a good enough immune memory against what I'm immunizing you with. That's the reason for not mixing a current infection with a vaccine at the same time. But otherwise, there is no reason why you can't be immunized. So in short, simple answer to you, pretty soon. Once you've given your body 2 weeks to recover from your current infection and you haven't got a temperature and you're otherwise well on the road to recovery, go and get immunized.
Great, thank you very much. So our next question from Facebook is from Vicky. I've had the vaccine, then 5 days later I tested positive for COVID. Does this affect my immunity at all?
Difficult to tell, but empirically speaking, I don't think so. Now, this is very interesting in other ways. So I have come across an incident, or more than one incident, whereby people went to get immunized, and in the process of going to get immunized, unfortunately, they dropped their guard and they got infected whilst they were waiting to get immunized. So what happened was they were all together, and unfortunately they were together too close whilst the jabs were being given, and they all got infected. So the message is, don't drop your guard whilst you are waiting to get immunized, and don't drop your guard after you have been immunized. So in your case, Vicky, you got infection 5 days later. Who knows? You were probably incubating the illness when you were immunized. And that's why, when we immunized you, we didn't know. And then 5 days later, you were positive. So this happens. And of course, your immune system had not kicked in because you were immunized, and it takes at least 10 days, 14 days for the immunity to start working. And your final question is, does this affect the immunity at all? The answer is highly unlikely.
That's great news for Vicky. Thank you very much for that one. And we go to a question from Helen. I had COVID and I'm on day 4 of having the positive result. I've been told day 10 is the worst. Is that true?
No, not necessarily. Usually it's around 7 or 8 when sometimes people go on to develop pneumonia, viral pneumonia. But Helen, what you need to be aware of, and I hope you are, and I hope you are taking precautions, is monitor your shortness of breath. This is very, very important. So some people can be gradually getting what we would call oxygen depleted and be unaware. So Helen, you need somebody to watch over you and say, are you okay? And are you behaving okay? And finally, one more thing, you will have heard of pulse oximeters. They measure the level of oxygen saturation in your blood. So that levels should be around 98, 99 all the time. And if you're monitoring it, say 4 times a day, every day, and charting it, and it goes from 99 to 94 or 93 or something like that, then that is the time to call for help, at least urgently. Okay. So Helen, my advice is talk to your GP and say, can I have that pulse oximeter if you haven't got it? You might be able to buy it yourself if you are in the younger age group. I don't know how old you are. So older age groups are being given pulse oximeters, younger age group, maybe not, but you can still monitor or at least ask yourself the active question, am I really, really worn out, really tired? I can't walk the stairs. then those are danger signs. Those are telling you that you need to sort of seek help urgently as soon as possible. Don't ignore it. I hope I've been able to reassure you, Helen.
Thank you very much. And our next question is from Annette. What percentage of the population needs to be immunized to stop the virus? And again, that's a question that we see a lot.
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you have a strain that is not very infectious, then you say between 70 or so percent will look after the population quite well with herd immunity by immunization. But Annette, in this case, this virus has now changed to become more infectious. And it's become more infectious because the infected person often is without signs and symptoms. And number two, they release a lot of these virus particles infecting. So it's easier for other people to get infected because there is more of it. So under those circumstances, we may need to immunize 85% of the population to get better protection from the immunization program. So it was around 70 to begin with, but because the virus has changed, we will have to change our game to a bigger percentage of the population immunized, 85%.
Thank you for that question, Annette. We go to a question from Lauren, and it says, what do you think life will be like by the summer? Do you think there will be less restrictions?
I think life will be marginally better, but it won't be back to normal. And I have to be honest and truthful about it, because people are making plans. People think it is all sunny uplands tomorrow or soon. Impossible. So it's better I am honest and say, I don't think people will be traveling to Spain, Italy, Alicante, Canary Islands, and Thailand and further afield. I don't think so. So there may be fewer restrictions, but I think we need to be prepared that it won't be possible, not by summer.
And we go to John, who asks, what are the implications of mixing the vaccine? For example, having the Pfizer one and then being told that the second one will be the AstraZeneca, asking for an elderly relative who is facing this exact situation. Thank you.
No problem, John. No problem at all. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Full stop. We do this often with hepatitis B when people don't seroconvert, and I really want them to seroconvert because they're working in a sensitive area like surgery. So no problem at all. No problem, none whatsoever. Look, the Pfizer does its immune job one way. The AstraZeneca Oxford one does its immune generating job another way. But at the end of the day, it is generating immunity. No problem at all. Don't worry about it.
That's great reassurance. Thank you very much. So Kelly on Facebook says, a care home in Sweden had all had both vaccines and still got COVID. Is that because it affects people differently and that we can still carry the virus after vaccination?
Okay, so yes, you answered the question yourself, really, Kelly. And that is what I said, which is that no vaccine is 100% protective. Second point is, we don't know what was given and how it was given, and why it is unusual for all the people in the home to have had the vaccine and then all of them get infected. That's unusual, because that's telling me, was there a vaccine batch failure or something like that, or something doesn't feel right. I would expect a proportion of the people to get infected, because it's not 100% protective, as we just said. It could be around 75% protective. So were they all in the unlucky 25%? That's unusual. So my answer is, I don't know. It sounds unusual.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our questions for today. So thanks to everyone who's been watching, and thank you very much for your time. I'm sure you've answered lots of people and also reassured lots of people today. So we'll see you on our next Facebook Live, and take care.
Thank you.